Hi, everyone. I'm Mary with Chief Financial Mom,
And I'm Maggie with Make a Money Mindshift.
and we are two financially minded moms here to talk about money and answer your questions. And we're really excited to have a special guest with us today, Dr. Sonya Britt Lutter, who is a professor at Kansas State University in financial planning. I should know this. In full disclosure, Sonya was actually my major professor over a decade ago when I was getting my PhD at K-State. So welcome, Sonya. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Maggie, for having me. This is really quite exciting to be able to be here with you two live.
Yeah.
So I come here from Kansas State University, and there I have been a financial planner professor for a while. And I also have a background in marriage and family therapy. And so for the last several years, I've been leading a department that contains marriage and family therapy and early childhood education and conflict resolution and financial planning. So it's been a really interesting experience to be able to tie everything together a little bit more and really focus in on the holistic wellness that goes along with financial planning, because it's never just about the money. And so this is really fun to be able to talk to you a little bit more in detail about some of those research findings and maybe some things that you can find applicable in your own life.
Thank you. One of the things that I really like about Sonya is it's not just what she thinks is best, but everything that she knows is research based. So what you're hearing today actually has research and theory behind it to make sure that we're giving you the most scientific and up-to-date cutting edge financial planning that is out there. And I love it too, because we're talking about topics that sure, they're about money, but we're not telling you what to do with your money. Instead, we're talking about the relational side of money, which I think for a lot of people, and Maggie, what are your thoughts? But I think for a lot of people, that's the most uncomfortable part about money, right?
I absolutely agree, Mary. I'm very excited to hear what Sonya has to say, because I think that there can be so much tension that comes in with money. And so many times people don't even know that the tension is there until you start to talk about it. And then because you know that tension's there, then you don't even want to talk about it anymore.
Absolutely. In fact, Sonya is a cutting edge researcher in terms of psychological stress with money. And so, Sonya, tell us about a few of the findings and maybe some things that you saw along the way with individuals.
Yeah, I feel like Maggie was really setting that up so nicely there, talking about how do you know when a person is tense? Because some of us are super good at hiding when we're anxious and we're stressed out. And we're so good at it sometimes we don't even know that we're at a heightened physiological stress status. And so one of the really fascinating things that Mary helped me with some of this research is you can assess a person's physiological stress. So what's going on deep down in them with the temperature of their skin. And this is so easy for you to do at home. It's also very easy to do for you as an accountant, you as a financial planner, to assess the stress of your clients very objectively. But when you're at home with your partner or even with your children, if you feel their hand and it feels cold to the touch, essentially what this is telling us is that a person's blood is going back up into their heart to prepare themselves for the basic biological response of fight or flight. And so your extremities have less blood in them, therefore they get cold. And this is also where you hear the saying, do you have cold feet? It's the same concept that when you are in that heightened stress status, the blood is running up to your heart to prepare yourself for that physical reaction, whatever it is, whether you're going to fight through that or run away from that. And in current day, the running away is more of the ignoring the problem or changing the conversation or go clean the sink instead of have that conversation. Like, we're all pretty good at some of those things. And the last year, I think most of us have become even better at hiding some of our stress. So I think that's a really neat thing, just to be able to take a break and learn what your skin temperature feels like. If you're at home and you have a thermometer in the kitchen, just pick it up and hold it on the end and you can see what temperature it reads. You're shooting for something in the 90-degree range, so it's not the same as internal temperature. But if you're much lower like me, sometimes can get down into the 70s. This is not a good thing. And that is something you can very easily feel when you're shaking somebody's hand or holding their hand or something like that. And why all of this matters, let's bring it back to financial planning for a minute, is when we're in that heightened physiological stress state, our mind is not able to think about forward planning. It's just simply can't, it's blocked. And so the only thing that you're reacting upon is the here and now, and it's very emotional based. And this is bad in a lot of ways, but it prevents us from thinking about, what do I need to do for retirement, or what do I need to do for the children's education? Because all what I'm thinking about right now is this exact moment in time, and what do I need to survive until the next minute from now, the next hour, the next day. So it's not really a good idea to just try to have deep conversations with your partner when you're in that heightened physiological state. And that's why it's a neat way to be able to objectively tell yourself if you are in a good place to have a conversation or not.
So Sonya, let me ask you something too. If you were going to go and it sounds like someone who maybe is living paycheck to paycheck or always in some kind of financial situation, would you anticipate that they are more in that heightened awareness state versus people who maybe have more income? Are they less stressed about money? Is it income based at all?
No, it is not income based at all. It's just different issues in those scenarios. So if you're living paycheck to paycheck, that is the norm. And so you're probably not going to see a higher baseline stress level in those situations, but you'll certainly see the peaks, such as the mortgage is due and how are we going to pay that tomorrow, types of things, versus somebody with a higher income. They have a whole different set of stressors that could be very income based as well, with the adult child wanting a loan that will never be paid back. Like, how do you deal with that situation? So the issues are going to exist across all income levels, are just going to be different. And I think you'll see that the physiological stress would be pretty similar across income levels as well.
That's so interesting, Sonya. I do have a follow-up question. So when you're talking about the physiological response, is that similar to, I think, what's called white coat syndrome, when you go to the doctor and your blood pressure has really increased, and so sometimes they'll put you in a quieter room so you can just try and calm down?
Absolutely. Yep.
And so, Sonya, let's apply that same concept to financial planning. What happens when someone walks into the room with a financial planner or a financial counselor or coach? How do they react?
Yes, this is where I love to teach financial planners about this concept, for them to take a break and ask how the client is doing and just have a general conversation before you jump into the numbers, because it is a scary thing. So you as the consumer can certainly apply that in the opposite direction, and you start the conversation and ask about whatever it may be, whatever sports season we're in. Ask about the game that you just saw, or ask about the weather. All of that basic chat that we normally do. It's well worth spending an extra 15 minutes on that excess conversation, if you will, because you're going to have a much more meaningful result at the end of that, by just taking a few minutes to feel a little bit more relaxed yourself.
And so another thing that I think you've worked a lot with is environments, right? Like how a financial planner could come across, and even in empowering a client, maybe what they could look for in a financial planner, of who's going to listen to them, who's going to seek their needs. What should a client be looking for in a financial planning setting?
The gut reaction. Can you feel comfortable with this person? Do you feel like you can have the small chit chat without feeling the pressure to immediately react to a proposal that's presented to you? So we all have that natural feeling, like, I feel comfortable with you and I feel like I can have a conversation. That's what you need. You don't want to have that white coat syndrome with your financial planner, for sure. So if that's what you're feeling, you should probably shop around and look for somebody else who can better meet your needs.
And just for a plug-in as well, if you're wondering what questions to ask a financial planner what you should do in those situations, go to Chief Financial Mom. And on our free giveaway is actually a bunch of questions to ask a financial planner, everything from education and background, certifications, as well as how they answer your questions and how they get paid. So that's all on Chief Financial Mom, and we'll put a link in the show notes towards that as well. So Sonya, let's switch gears a little bit. We're talking today to moms especially, and you've studied a lot about money and relationships, specifically marital relationships. One thing that you've come up recently is something called the Love and Money curriculum, and you've got an article entitled Love and Money, Reducing Stress and Improving Couples Happiness. So we've got to know, what's the secret?
I have to first do a quick aside because I gave a presentation at an academic conference, and I promise I won't talk about the academic side of the curriculum too much. But I was in this academic conference and there was a student in the room, a college student, and he asked, "Is this a guide to finding love?" Sort of. But it's the combination of the love and money. But it was so cute as a college student asking that question. So this curriculum was so fun to develop because it went through many rounds of testing with me developing the curriculum and me delivering the curriculum. And then I gave it to students and had them work with their own couples and see if the results would be the same. I gave it to a financial planner and a marriage and family therapist, and all of us consistently had the same results, to where when couples go through these guided 5 conversations together, their financial stress decreases and their relationship stress decreases. And so the 5 areas that we go over are tied to all sorts of areas of life, and very little of it is about the traditional financial planning elements. That's why you have a financial planner or an accountant. The number element, I think all of us would agree here, is the easy part.
Mhm.
It's the conversation part that's a little bit more challenging with that. So that's what the curriculum is all about. And most of the time, the couples came in because the wife wanted to come, and the husband was a good husband and came along with her. And it was so incredible to watch the development over. Most of people went through in 5 weeks. It's 5 different lessons. Some people it stretched out more to 8 weeks, or just depending on scheduling. But over those course of 5 to 8 weeks, to see the husbands change and open up in conversation was absolutely incredible. And a lot of the activities you could do at home if you do have small children. I think we've determined that I have small children, so I keep bringing it back to this. We have tons of Play-Doh in our house.
Yep.
So there's one activity you can do that involves Play-Doh. And I was working with this one couple, and they were in their 40s. And this was the 3rd time that I had met with them. And the first 2 times, the husband basically said nothing. And I was so nervous about the 3rd time because it was the Play-Doh activity. And I thought, he is going to just think I am absolutely nuts and not engage in this activity. And the activity is, I give them a tub of Play-Doh and ask them to sculpt their earliest memory about money. And he pulled out the Play-Doh without saying anything, and he made the most detailed pig that you have ever seen made out of Play-Doh. Like, he got out his pen and he was drawing the indentions in it, the cute little curly tail. I mean,
Wow.
It was an amazing pig. And I thought for sure this was going to be a conversation about, so then they tell the story about the sculpture. And I thought for sure it was going to be a story about the piggy bank, you know, seems natural to pig, talking about money. This was a conversation. I live in the Midwest, so he also lives in the Midwest. And it was a conversation about his earliest memory was taking this pig that he had raised at age 8 to the county fair. So he had spent all winter raising this little piglet. For those of you familiar with the county fairs, this is where you go and you show your farm animals. And some of us, all 3 of us know what happens at the end of the fair. Pig gets sold to somebody else and it goes away. And this is exactly what happened to this pig. And for him, it was really the first opportunity he saw that he spent all of this time and effort that entire week in the county fair, staying with the pig in the pens. It's 100 degrees outside, sweat, dirty, just not really an extremely pleasant situation, even for an 8-year-old boy. And at the end of the week, when the pig was sold, his parents took the money, and that was that. And his wife looked at him and she said, now I know why you want to know where every penny is and why you are so careful about watching the money. And this had never come up in conversation. Like, I don't even know if she knew he had pigs as a child, because it's not a normal part of conversation. If you meet in your 20s or 30s or 40s, like, why would I be talking about the pig I had when I was an 8-year-old? But for them, that was a real game changer. And after that, the conversation really opened up between them. And we found out that she actually wanted to know more about where the money was, and she wanted to help keep track of the money. She didn't know how much the mortgage cost. She didn't know where their savings was. She basically knew nothing about the financial situation because he was always very controlling, not in a bad way, but it was just, that was their pattern. He kept track of the money to the penny, and she didn't know. And so this gave them the opportunity for him to show her where the money was and show her how he was tracking the money. And she started getting involved in that process. And it was really incredible, from something as silly as the tub of Play-Doh. And it's something you can do at home. It does feel weird saying, what if we just try this? But you don't need anybody to guide that conversation. And it just transports you back into a time and maybe brings up something that you didn't even know about yourself.
Absolutely.
So powerful.
I love how simple things can turn so much of a conversation. And really, it's about communication. It's really about starting a conversation. You don't need an outside person to do that. In some cases, absolutely. There's conflict enough that a mediator or someone needs to come in and step in. And by all means, are we suggesting you get help there? But sometimes it's literally sitting down and spending that time together and having a couple conversations, finding out how they grew up and what those things mean to them. You have another article that I think perfectly matches into this. It's called Tightwads and Spenders and Predicting Financial Conflict in Couple Relationships. So tell us, what did you find in the study and how do these things all meet up?
This one is also mind-blowing for me anyway, that we today in 2021 are still stuck in some really gender-based biases when it comes to household finances. For this particular study, what we found was when the husband saw the wife as spendy, so she was spending too much money, regardless of how much money was actually being spent, he just thought she was spending too much money, the conflict in the household increased. Whenever she felt the same, that her husband was thinking she was too spendy, conflict increased. But what we did not see is when the husband was seen as spendy, conflict did not increase at nearly the same pace. But what we did see with men was, as there was more children in the household, he reported more financial conflict in the household. And this is very gender-based, with other research that adds upon this, that when men have extra income, however you would like to define that, he tends to spend it on himself for personal entertainment. When the wife has extra income, she tends to spend it on the children. We're all shaking our heads. We have seen this play out ourselves. And so I think what you're seeing there is the husband is feeling like too much money is being spent on children activities, whether that's entertainment or sports or clothes or toys or whatever the case may be. And vice versa, when she's spending too much money, this is seen as being highly conflictual for the couple.
So could something as simple as a conversation like the Love and Money curriculum you just mentioned, can that help de-stereotype these gender roles, but also maybe de-escalate some of the contention in the relationship?
Absolutely. Yes, because even the simple example of the one couple with the Play-Doh exercise, it gave them the opportunity to have a conversation that was not typical, versus just sitting down and talking through, we need to talk about the budget. It was a fun way to have that conversation in a different way. There was one couple who decided to take the weekend away from their children and just spend time thinking about what their future financial goals were. And that was really eye-opening for them. Another thing that we do in the curriculum is ask the couples to think about, it's a fun little activity where they sit back to back, and I ask them question, who's in charge of planning the household vacations? Who's in charge of taking out the trash? Who's in charge of making sure the taxes get filed? And each of them back to back are holding up sign, that's him or that's me. And then at the end, I would tell them, okay, well, you agreed on these things, and these are areas that you are different. Is there anything that you like about that? Even for the things where they both said that it was her, for instance, there were a lot of situations they said, well, yeah, that's the way it was when we first got married. But then we had children, or then our mom got sick, and maybe it's time to reevaluate those conversations. So really just trying to take it out of the day-to-day grind of things and mix it up and do something fun and try to bring the conversation back to a different point in time, I think really helps de-escalate some of those stress and allows you to have some of those conversations that are not easy, like spending.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sonya, that actually brings a question to my mind. So I've heard a lot of where the recommendation is to have like a money date night, where you're basically trying to pair some fun, you're away from the kids, so you're away from that grind of the distraction of them, mommy, daddy, the whole time. But then you're getting away, and can you still have a little bit of fun along with having some serious topics, because it would be a nice balance to have the two.
Definitely. And the Play-Doh activity is a fun thing to do, and you could do that repeatedly over lots of different exercises, and it really brings people back into kind of a child's state of mind. And while the story I gave you maybe was had a bit of a sad ending, there were other stories that were really beautiful and had really happy endings. So I think doing things like that, or going on walks together and having the conversation. This is a little bit off topic, but I would be remiss not to mention it, that there's some other research, it's coming, it's not from me, but it's from some colleagues. And it shows that for every 15 minutes that you are outdoors, even during the winter, you're pretty much any indicator of mental health that you can think about increases. So your anxiety decreases, your satisfaction increases, your mood increases, you sleep better. So just that mere fact of going outside for 15 minutes with your spouse to have conversations about money is going to do wonders, I promise.
Yeah. And Maggie, this reminds me too of a blog post that I've got about how to talk to your spouse about money. And it is sitting like Sonya and I are, where we are next to each other, not facing each other, where there's attacking and finger pointing, but we're next to each other. And in couples, a lot of times I encourage them to hold hands. So this is a great exercise to do outdoors. Take a walk together, walk forward. And that, there's many ways to look at this too, but with money, you're looking in the future, you're going forward. As you're walking together, you're also looking forward, you're seeing the future. It's just some great ways. So I've got some 5 tips, and we'll link that in the show notes as well.
And while you're walking, holding hands, you can also assess skin temperature to assess stress. Bringing it back to that one.
Oh, good. That was a good one.
We'll wrap up. Well, Sonya, help us and all of our listeners today. If there was just one small thing that you wanted a listener to start doing today to improve their money relationships, what is that one piece of advice you'd offer?
I really would bring it back to the physiological stress and just being aware of where you are presently and where your partner is presently. And if you see that either one of you is in a heightened stress situation, just wait, have the conversation later. It will not be productive in that moment. So just being aware of where you are at the moment.
Yeah, I love it. There's so much to glean here in terms of couples and relationships and money, right? And I love that we're not, Maggie, well, you and I have talked about this quite a bit, that there's so much that we talk about money, but really it's about life. It's about who we are and understanding ourselves better and understanding our partners and being happier, finding joy in the small things. And that doesn't come from money. That comes from each other and building each other up. Any final thoughts from you, Maggie?
I just enjoy this conversation so much. I mean, and Sonya, just what you've added to what just some of the work that I do with my clients, it's just bringing it back to saying, okay, sometimes I'll have my clients, we will all take deep belly breaths together, because even through Zoom, I can see their shoulders are hunched, they're sitting next to their partner, but they're not really with their partner. And just in seeing that, I'll just say, okay, we're just going to take a couple deep breaths, because deep breaths, I mean, they could cure countries at this point. If everybody could just take some deep breaths every now and then, if we could all just do that, it would work wonders. So thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, Sonya, tell our listeners how they can connect with you.
You can find me on LinkedIn, Sonya Lutter, Lutter.
Great. Hey, if you like this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channels at MakeAMoneyMindshift.com and chieffinancialmom.com. Make sure and put your comments in the link below and tell us what you'd like to hear next, and join us in 2 more weeks for another Money Talk. Bye, everyone. Bye, Maggie.